The Florida Panthers will not face any more discipline for a hit that hurt Brandon Hagel. Is this a rerun? This isn't a rerun. This happened again. Huh. Okay. We'll talk about the Hagel decision on today's Locked on Lightning.
You're Locked on Lightning, your daily podcast on the Tampa Bay Lightning, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked on Lightning your first listen of the day. Every single day, we are your free daily Tampa Bay Lightning podcast, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. As always, we want to begin with a shout out to our everydayers. Those of you who tune into every single show, every single day, we love you and we appreciate the support you give us week in, week out. I'm Nick Morgan, and I am joined by the Chevy Chase to my Beverly D'Angelo, Greg Stephen. Greg, welcome in, my friend.
Good morning. Good morning. Happy Wednesday. A lot to talk about with this Hagel hit, huh?
There certainly is. I don't know how to dive into this one. It's complicated. I would say more complicated than the situation in preseason was. And this is coming from somebody who had a whole episode rant about how much Department of Player Safety sucks. We'll dive into it for sure, because it is certainly a interesting decision. Also, we know what else is interesting is that Brayden Point, Greg, in good news, is on the rise, has absolutely been hot in the few games he's been back since injury. We'll talk about his rise and a little bit of a Lightning Christmas wish list with the holiday season approaching. Greg and I are going to be talking about the things we would like to see the Lightning do before Christmas, before that holiday break. A lot to get to on today's show. Before we get started, do want to mention today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL bets all season long. All right, Greg, let's start with the big talker. We talked yesterday. Brandon Hagel left the Panthers game after, I'll call it a high hit from Seth Jones, a forearm to somewhere in the upper body that knocked Brandon Hagel out of the game. We learned yesterday that the NHL Department of Player Safety will not give Seth Jones any additional punishment for that hit. We also don't know Brandon Hagel's status, but we do know that he has had a history of head injuries, thanks in large part to the Florida Panthers. Greg, what's your thoughts on all this?
I think the key sentence you just said was mostly from the Florida Panthers, right?
Yeah.
How long are they going to get away with making high contact to Brandon Hagel's upper body? I mean, it seems to happen every single time this matchup occurs, does it not? I mean,
really,
it's getting pretty exhausting. At this point, I would assume, if I'm Department of Player Safety, that this is, targeting him specifically. And I don't know if this is still a revenge type deal from them, or if it's just another coincidence. He just got hit up high on a weird play by Seth Jones. But ultimately, to me, this has to be at least a penalty. And if you're not going to call it a penalty, I cannot see how this is not a fine.
Yeah, it was reckless. And I think that's the biggest thing. We had I believe a Panthers fan comment on our show yesterday who was like, look, the Panthers have taken liberties against the Lightning. Both sides have taken liberties with each other. At what point do you call it even, though? I mean, I think that's the thing, and get back to hockey. Like, is Brandon Hagel going to be targeted every time he steps onto the ice because of the Barkov hit last year?
Right.
Like, what if, every single time these two teams played, somebody went out there and just two-hand slash Aaron Ekblad across the ribs?
Exactly.
Would that be it? And that's my thing. And I'm not saying it is. I don't think Seth Jones is a dirty player. For somebody who's watched him for well over 10 years now, which, God, that sentence makes me feel old and decrepit. I don't think it was a dirty player. I think, again, we've talked about this, Greg, the difference between reckless and dirty. And I think that was maybe a reckless hit. I don't think he saw – I don't think this was like the playoffs where he saw – Brandon Hagel was like, I'm about to send a message to this guy. I think he was coming in arms up high and wound up hitting him high with the arm extended. That being said, it is interesting when you break down the video of Aaron Ekblad's hit on Brandon Hagel and Seth Jones's hit on Brandon Hagel, it's kind of the same approach. Mm-hmm. Arm up high. I'm not saying Seth Jones was going for the head, but it was high contact with the arm up and elbow up. It's interesting, Greg, that there's a lot of similarities between the approaches for those two hits.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. I think, like you said, to me, this is also simply a reckless play. I agree with you. I don't see Seth Jones as being a dirty player by any means. But I just think it's the fact that it was Hagel, and I'm not saying that Seth Jones was like, oh, here's Brandon Hagel, let me throw up my forearm.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if the same guy is repeatedly getting injured against the same team, I think as Department of Player Safety, you need to step up here and kind of say, look, enough's enough, whether he's out for long term or it was malicious or not. It's still conceptually the same guy getting hit up high, leaving the game. And I think you just have to go ahead and assume, look, this has got to stop.
Yeah.
Whatever this was needs to end, because the Lightning are just not supposed to play Hagel against the Panthers now? I mean, I think that's kind of ridiculous. And for there to be no penalty and no fine is another, it's just ludicrous to me, especially like we've talked about. You lead with the forearm. That's just not how you make a hockey play. And by bringing up the forearm and following through with it, I think that alone warrants something. I don't know whatever they want to make it, it has to be something. And the fact that there was nothing is extremely aggravating.
I will say the NHL is certainly doing nothing to beat the allegations.
Yeah.
This is another, let's say, questionable hit from a Florida Panther. I'm not going to say it's dirty.
Right.
I'm not going to say anything like that. This is a reckless play from a Florida Panther that is getting treated differently than other plays we've seen like that. And you know what? We've seen high hits like that from players across the NHL that didn't necessarily make the kind of head contact that, you would see from a traditional elbow to side of the face play.
Right.
We've seen plays like that, punished by the NHL. This is another kind of questionable hit that from a Florida Panther that the NHL is opting not to do anything about, or and I think that's the biggest thing to me is there's inconsistency when it comes to a certain team. And I think that's where people go, And quite frankly, it's not helping the Florida Panthers because they're going to go out there with a target on their back.
Oh, yeah.
If you go back and if that AJ Greer sucker punch, I'll gladly call that a sucker punch.
100%.
That AJ Greer sucker punch on Brandon Hagel, if the NHL came down and was like, you're out for 3 games. Because that was a sucker punch to the head for somebody who's had a concussion in the context of this guy was involved in a very controversial play the last time you guys played.
Yep.
If the NHL came down hard on that, Scott Sabrin probably doesn't go after Aaron Ekblad. We don't get the situation that we got in preseason. That to me is the biggest thing is the NHL's not doing the Florida Panthers any favor by not coming down on these hits because you're going out there and putting a target on this team's back now.
Yeah.
You're going to have players take matters in their own hands and say, if the NHL is not going to punish Seth Jones for this, then I'd say Curtis Douglas, but I haven't seen him win a lot of fights, but Scott Sabrin, maybe But if you do this against another team, you're just going to have that team's enforcer go out and gladly take a 3-game suspension for beating the crap out of a very good Florida Panthers player.
Right.
Like
you're welcoming retaliation.
Yeah. So to me, it's the NHL needs to ramp up the consistency around this team, not just because it's the right thing to do, but also if you want to bring down the temperature, you've got to do it. And you're going to put Florida Panthers players in jeopardy, and they're going to have to fight a lot of their own battles. They're going to lose some of those battles based on some of the guys around the NHL.
Yeah. And like you said, not only are they signing up the Florida Panthers to be beat up, but the team that's going after them will also probably lose some stuff. And that's just not quite what we want in the NHL. We'd rather watch hockey. And look, some fighting and anger and that kind of stuff, it belongs in the sport. But the bad blood between these teams is almost concerning at this point.
Yeah. Well, and that's the other end of this is these two teams play the first game after Christmas, Greg. And I'll just ask your quick thoughts. Like, are you expecting anything?
I think so. If I'm on the Bolts and I see this guy doesn't get any sort of penalization for this, I'm thinking, let's throw hands, right? I mean, are you not?
No, I mean, I agree with you.
Yeah.
And not only that, but the Jake Gensel, Mikkola hitting Jake Gensel high in the back of the head after the whistle. And I know there was, a scrum for the puck involved, but again,
doesn't matter.
You're not doing players on either team any favor. And honestly, if I'm the NHL, I'm getting these two teams together. I'm sitting down and saying, it's like, look, this is what's going to happen. I want no more. It should have happened after preseason. It happened to the Lightning. It didn't happen to the Panthers. And here we are. We're talking about the same thing again.
Yeah. And it's so interesting after they already played a game this season and it was 3-1 and it was actually a pretty good game to watch. Nothing crazy happened.
Yeah. And you and I both thought like, hey, okay, this is we can just get back to physical hockey.
Right. But
lest we forget.
We'll see.
It can't all be bad news around the Lightning fandom right now or tense news. Let's talk about Brayden Point, somebody who, since he's been back from injury, has been shades of Brandon Point again. We'll talk about what's gotten into his sudden hot play when we come back. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch. The holidays are my favorite time of year, but they can also get overwhelming fast between all the travel, buying all the gifts, going to all the parties, and all the regular year-end expenses you have to deal with. It's really easy to lose track of your money this time of year. That's exactly why Monarch has become such a game changer to me. If you want to keep your finances under control this holiday season, you need to be using Monarch. It's rated Wall Street Journal's best budgeting app of 2025. Monarch is an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, simple dashboard. Monarch was so easy to set up. I just linked all my bank accounts, my credit cards, 401ks, investments, all that good stuff. And within seconds, I could see my spending in real time, even broken down into smart categorization. The holiday budget is a lifesaver this time of year. All I had to do was put in exactly how much I had set aside for Christmas gifts, Christmas travel, parties, everything like that. And every time I swiped my card or added a transaction, bought a present, I learned in real time how much money I have left in my holiday budget. Monarch is also perfect for couples. The shared dashboard, shared goals, and fewer how much did we spend conversations that pop up when you use this are gold. So don't let this financial opportunity slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarch.com in your browser for half off your first year. Again, 50% off your first year at monarch.com with code LOCKEDONNHL. Back on Locked on Lightning, Nick Morgan here alongside Greg Steven. And Greg, let's talk some happy hockey. Let's talk Brayden Point. This was a guy who a couple of weeks ago, you and I were talking as maybe a negative for the Tampa Bay Lightning. Somebody who just didn't seem to be up to his old stuff this season. Looked a little bit slow, looked a little bit off. Wound up getting injured, has come back to the team. And since then, Greg, This guy has been an absolute revelation. In the 4 games he's been back, he has 7 points, 3 multi-point games. Liking what you're seeing from Brayden Point in his return.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He looks like he's his former self, and that's all we've been asking for this whole season. I mean, and it's interesting that it took what he had, I think, 7 games off, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it was a while. Yeah.
Right. And to come back from that and then just look like a new guy is pretty interesting, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Especially, you miss that many games. Sometimes it takes you a game or two to kind of get back into what you're up to. Mm-hmm. And for him to just be able to step right in and not only be the same player, but be a better player than he was early on this season, very impressive. And like you said, I don't think he hasn't had a game without a point. And he's absolutely rolling. He's noticeable on every shift you see him out there. And that's the guy we're used to seeing in 21. And yeah, excited for him. I'm happy that he's back on the roll. The Lightning need this, right? I mean, especially
Absolutely.
Right now with all the injuries going on that we always talk about, we need the big boys to step up, and he is one of those guys.
Well, and it's not just that, but it seemed like the one piece for the Lightning that wasn't rolling this year.
Right.
Like Nikita Kucherov got going in a huge way.
Yeah.
Brandon Hagel overcame his slow start. Jake Gensel's been on fire. Even somebody like Darren Radish has stepped up recently and has been great. And we talked, there was a certain point this season that we looked at Anthony Cirelli and was like, this guy's the MVP.
Right.
Brayden Point was the one guy that just didn't seem to have it together. Yeah. And I think you and I talked about this, Greg. It's not that he's looked bad. It's just that he's invisible. And that was kind of maybe the bigger red flag, was that I don't see him on the ice necessarily doing anything bad. I just see him not necessarily doing anything. Like, you kind of watch him and forget he's on the ice. And it's kind of like, this is Brayden Point we're talking about, man. Yeah. Like, this is the number 1 center for the Tampa Bay Lightning, a guy that has been so good in both ends of the ice for so long. And he's kind of been invisible at times this season. And that, to me, has been the one thing that the Lightning have been missing, is just that number 1 surefire, center who can control the ice while Nikita Kucherov is doing his thing, or Jake Gensel's doing his thing, or Brandon Hagel's doing his thing. I think Brayden Point, if he's able to continue this and start looking like Brayden Point again, whether he was dealing, with the after effects of some injury, whether he was just not necessarily on his game, that's huge for the Lightning. And I think, honestly, other than health, I think that's kind of their last missing piece towards sort of being that bona fide throw all your money in at the center of the table type of contender. And if he's good to go, and if he's back up to form, then yeah, the Lightning, I would say, check all the boxes of a team that you would feel confident saying this is a favorite for the Stanley Cup.
Yeah, completely agree with you. I think it's interesting that it's taken him so long, I think, because I don't recall a season where he's had that long of a slump. And it leads me to speculate that he was maybe not playing at full health early on this season.
I thought that too.
And maybe those 7 games off allowed his body to just kind of finish whatever he was going through. And look, I'll take that all day long. I think a big part of his game that has improved is just his defensive game. When he did go out with injury, I think he was -11.
We were talking about that,
which is abysmal, obviously, especially for your starting center. And we again, you kind of touched on it. Cooch was not super great early on as well, but he worked his way out of that, and he improved his differential and started playing better defense. But we just didn't see that from Brayden Point. But over the last few games, you can see him. He's like you said, he's not invisible anymore. And they're going to need that to continue, especially with 1, the injuries, and 2, if you want to make a cup run, he's a guy you need to be on fire. I think it's safe to say.
Number 1 center.
And again, I think with the power play as well recently, they have been converting, but when he was not around, they were struggling. And I think he is a huge part of the power play, because when he's in that bumper spot, it requires the D to collapse just a little more because they know Cooch is gonna look for that little quick pass.
Yeah.
And if they're not careful, that's going right in every time with Brayden Point. And now that he's on fire and he's healthy, you got to be mindful of that if you're playing defense against that power play. So it's a huge threat to have him there, and you need him to be rolling for people to be scared of him.
That's an underrated part of his game too, is he plays so well in front of the net. You don't look at Brayden Point and think, oh yeah, that's a stereotypical power forward. Right. Or that's somebody who gets in the gritty areas. You know, he's got a lot of skill, but he also knows how to navigate, you know, the front of that ice so well. Mm-hmm. And the other thing that I'll throw out too, Greg, is that I think Brayden Point looking more like a 1C. I think you drop Anthony Cirelli into a spot he's more comfortable with and just being that support guy, you know, being that really good number 2 center in a way in which you don't expect him to score a lot, but do a lot of the same skill sets as that number 1C. Because I think that's look, I was thrilled as anybody that we were talking about Anthony Cirelli, and it's like he looks like the number 1 center this season. And I'm thrilled for the, you know, the way he stepped up and kind of carried this team early on. But Brayden Point, quite frankly, has a little bit more of an offensive upside than Cirelli does. And so I think having Brayden Point back to 100%, you put Anthony Cirelli back in that number 2 center role. I think that's more of kind of where you want each of them to be. Now you can't have Cirelli step up when you need him to, but really you're just asking him to go out there, win his matchups, play really sound hockey, and not necessarily worry about having to put in like 80 points a season.
Right. That's actually an excellent point that I didn't think about. And I love that you brought it up because I think it also alleviates some pressure on Cirelli. And not that I'm saying he goes out there and he's like, oh God, I'm playing with Cooch, but that's got to add some level of pressure when Cooch is the guy feeding you the puck constantly and you are kind of required to make a play with it. Mm-hmm. And not that Cirelli can't do that, but like you said, Point has more upside and is probably more comfortable doing that given the length of time he's played with Cooch. And also, look, Cirelli is, to me, while he does have offensive upside, he is a defensive guy.
Yeah.
And Hagel has more offensive game than Cirelli, but he is also, to me, a fairly strong defensive guy. And I think you want to save them, like you said, for that second line, kind of a slight utility line that can put in points. So yeah, I think you're right. Like having them in their correct spots, we'll call them, is key, and it should help them moving forward.
Yeah, a line that you can put out there when you need points, but also a line that you can put out there in any sort of matchup. I agree. I think a utility line is a really good way of kind of looking at that second line, and Anthony Cirelli fits that role so well.
100% he does.
Yeah. It's almost the holiday season. Well, I guess it is the holiday season, but it's almost time for Christmas Day. Greg, let's get our Christmas list wish together, shall we? Okay. List wish. I don't know why that was such a hard word to say, but we're going to be talking about things that we want to see from the Lightning before the holiday break. So the next little run of games. We'll talk about that when we come back on Locked on Lightning. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. NFL Sundays move fast. One big play and suddenly the entire game just feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment, even every Tampa Bay Buccaneers big drop on third down. Live betting is best when the game starts to shift. Maybe a receiver gets hot. Maybe a defense tightens up. Or the momentum flips after a big turnover. FanDuel lets you jump into the moment. The live spreads and money lines adjust instantly to every big play. Player props update as guys heat up. So if Bucky Irving's tearing it up on the ground, you can earn more money on his running stats. You can also bet on things like next touchdown score, drive results, totals, and more. It keeps you locked into every snap, every drive, every possibility. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. You can also download the FanDuel app straight to your phone and join the action wherever you go. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. We're back on Locked on Lightning. Nick Morgan here alongside Greg Steven. And Greg, it's time for our Lightning Christmas wish list.
Okay.
In the spirit of the holidays, you and I are putting together things that we would like to see from the Lightning or for the Lightning before the holiday break. So, Greg, what's the number one thing on your wish list? Maybe
One thing.
Guess what it is.
What?
I'm going to let you go, but I'm going to see if I can guess what it is.
Okay, let's hear what your guess is.
I'm going to guess it's health.
No, I think my wish list number one item is 2 wins in the last 3 games before break.
That's even better than health.
Yeah. Well, yes and no. But look, it's 3-game homestand, right? I think you got to pick up 2 wins. You're playing the Blues who've not looked good this season, and the Kings who are, fairly strong but still beatable. Mm-hmm. And then you play the Hurricanes in between those 2 teams, and that's a tough team to beat. So I can accept a loss there, but I think you got to win 2 of these 3. I think you do. Especially at home.
I agree with that. I think it's a good opportunity for the Bolts to build some momentum. The past couple of games haven't gone well. Obviously they had the back-to-back wins, but they've also, if you look at the big picture, have lost 4 of their last 6, coming off I would say a tense game against their arch rivals. You just kind of want to feel good going into the break. Kind of a time of year where the rest of the league shuts down. You want to have some momentum there. And look, 2 out of 3, I would absolutely take it in a heartbeat. Yeah, like if you're dropping that Blues game, I would say maybe it's a little bit of a red flag.
Yeah.
But, if you can get a win over, let's say, Carolina, who's right now the best team in the East in terms of record, that gives you some good feeling going into the break. Not just, hey, we got to win over a good team, but also gives you a little bit of momentum in terms of, look, we're hurt. We have some holes in the lineup. We're still proving that we're competitive against some of the NHL's best. So,
right. And we've seen them do that.
Yeah. And I agree with you there. And then, like if you can win the other, the Kings game, that's a bonus too. I would love to see all 3, but
right.
2 out of 3, I think is a good mark. Okay. I'll say health, Greg.
Nice.
Because that's number 1 to me on my wish list.
Right.
And it's been interesting because I can never quite read into what John Cooper's injury reports are regarding guys. Like I think somebody on Twitter, I apologize, I can't remember who it was, but somebody said, I would really love to explain how Andrei Vasilevsky went he's playing this Saturday to maybe he'll be back before Christmas. Right. It sounds like Ryan McDonough is day-to-day at this point. It sounds like Andrei Vasilevsky could potentially be ready to go at any moment. It sounds like they put Brandon Halverson back in the AHL yesterday, so that would seem to indicate Vazzy is going to play. You already have guys out of the lineup. I want to see some guys get back. I would love to get Ryan McDonough at least a couple of games here. And I would love to get Andrei Vasilevsky at least a couple of games here before Christmas when you already are going to have some extended time off. Just to kind of get them back and ready. And then I think the more people that you can get back before the break, Greg, I think the easier it's going to be to hit the ground running after that new year. And I think it's important looking at that January schedule for the Bolts. I think it is important to hit the ground running and get off to a really hot January.
Yeah, completely agree with you. Health is obviously key here. I think for me, it's a matter of making sure that they're ready to actually return too. So I don't know, like you said with the Vasi thing, it's so weird to say like, oh yeah, he's probably starting or he might. And then all of a sudden he's just not. And we hope that, by the next 10 days he'll return.
Yeah.
Like what something happened in practice or very interesting. But yeah, like you said, I think to build some momentum, if he can come back and he is actually 100%, yes, throw him in, obviously. But I just want to mention though, JoJo has looked good.
JoJo's looked great. Yeah.
And no diss there. yeah, obviously you want your starting goalie back. You want to get him some reps after he sits for a few games. But yeah, totally agree. I think you need to hit the ground running after this break, like you said, because again, their record hasn't been fantastic over the last 5 to 10. But we've seen them tear teams apart with all these injuries still when they went on the 7 game streak. So we know they can do it. And I think you got to start here with these 3 games, because I'd argue the Blues are the freest matchup in the NHL right now. No, I think,
you know what, you might be right, because the Nashville Predators have suddenly gotten hot over their
surging
past, like 2 games. Steven Stamkos 4-goal game the other night.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah. Should I give you one more wish list item?
Give me one more item on your wish list, Greg.
Okay. My wish list is for Brayden Point to continue his point streak.
Amen.
Because we need him. And I think the more he does it, the longer he's going to look like himself. And I want him to stay hot, especially going into break. I don't want there to be any tinge of doubt in his brain when he goes into break, like, oh no, am I going back into a slump? Like, I want him going in hot. I want him to come out hot, and I want him to stay hot.
I am going to say the same thing about Nikita Kucherov.
Nice.
Last thing on my wish list. Like, look, he's got a big run of points here. You know, had that span of 8 points in 3 games. Held off in that Florida game. But look, when Nikita Kucherov is on fire, the Tampa Bay Lightning can beat anybody in this league.
Oh yeah.
I truly believe that. And I think that's the key for the Lightning to get through some of these maybe sloppy games where a lot of people are out injured. As long as you have Nikita Kucherov as that ace in the hole on the top of the lineup, you have a chance to get through any single game, you know, with a win. And so I'm pairing my wish list with yours.
Nice.
I think Brayden Point with Nikita Kucherov, as long as those 2 guys are going, the Lightning have as good a chance as any to win every single game. So
yeah.
Let's hope.
Completely agree with you. Those 2 in conjunction, just something else, something special. We've seen it, and that's how you win back-to-back cups, right? You have 2 dynamic guys.
Yeah. Or the NHL just lets you get away with punching other players in the head. One of two ways to win a Stanley Cup. No, Florida Panthers earned it. They've played really well. Yeah, if you're listening in, let us know what's on your Lightning wish list. Tell us something that you would like to see the Lightning do before the holiday break next week. Wherever you're listening, whether you're watching us on YouTube or listening in on your favorite podcasting platform, hit that subscribe button. It not only lets you know when we have new content out for you, but it also helps us out with our numbers a little bit. Also, be sure to keep tabs on us on social media. We're Locked On Lightning, Instagram, TikTok, pretty much wherever you scroll. Find us on there and keep in touch. That's going to do it for us on today's Locked On Lightning. Thanks for making us your first listen of the day. New episode coming at you tomorrow. We'll see you then.